Well, morning, Internet people. It's 6:46 in the morning. It is Sunday, September 27th, 2020. Weaver, John C. How you doing? We have issues, boys and girls. That's coffee. That's not an issue. No, what is an issue at this point over here is I'm dealing with conversations with people who seem to be stuck and knowledge deprived. Apparently, when they are dealing with someone else's version of history, and they're going to be listening to someone else's history as they're getting revised left and right, they don't know how to do their own research. Now, I have to say, the ugliness of Trump and his followers never ceases to amaze me, because it's always demonstrating to me the lack of knowledge base of U.S. history, how the government system works, world history, and anything else regarding it. It's just going beyond their comfort level and their knowledge base, so much that they don't really care to understand how lacking this kind of information is tantamount to pretty much being stupid. I said it, stupid. We have protesters still going in the streets regarding Breonna Taylor. It's been about been about 5 nights already since the verdicts came in Kentucky. And they're pissed off about it. All over the country, still pissed off about the country and its handling of civil rights issues. It's a constant battle we've been having for a hell of a long while. I lost track how many months and years this has been ongoing at this point over here. We've been having our civil rights issues for a hell of a long while. Ever since we split apart, if I actually want to go that far, to the colonies back in the merry old 13 colony Revolutionary War period, and the fight for freedom, for man's rights, man's civil liberties. We had Magna Carta, we had the Declaration of Independence, we had the Constitution, we had documentations that would have helped out a great deal. But here's the problem. Magna Carta, let's see, that was in England at that point. But the rest of the two, American made, American born, but just declaring that only people in 13 original colonies were having a majority issues with England and its ironclad rule, that the Declaration was our complaint to England. Now, you're probably asking me, why am I bringing this information up when we have the civil unrest happening right now? Because people fail to take into context. Everything is about context, but they fail to see this. They fail to have imagination. Our civil rights movements, people thought, begun in the late 1950s to the 1960s. Rosa Parks decided she wasn't going to sit in the back of a bus. She's going to sit where the hell she was. It caused a hell of a stir. We have civil rights people fighting like crazy back in the 1960s to have schools integrated and not segregated, where people of all colors, can go into a coffee shop and sit with each other without being segregated. Then we can actually treat people as individuals and not as a color-coded race. Yes, I used the R word, race. And what I'm seeing is it's being replayed all over again. This time, if you're not wearing a red cap, you don't have any rights. You don't believe in a dictator, you don't have any rights. I hate to tell these people, but you guys don't learn about the Constitution, about American history, how to put things in perspective. Well, I guess we have a problem, boys and girls, don't we? Because it's not my problem that you were too damn stupid to study history. It's not my problem that you didn't pay attention to what the hell was going on. It's not my problem that you considered everything liberal-minded. Because this wasn't liberal-minded. This was history. And the thing is, I understand about history, and this is coming from a historical perspective, but it's also coming from a history professor I studied. History sometimes revises itself, especially when new discoveries of the past come into play, and changes the viewpoint around a bit. Wouldn't it have been nice if we actually had more clear aspect of the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, or worse? There are things happening in our lifetime that we didn't even bother to understand, and yet it still happened. I imagine that our Revolutionary War was fake news, despite the fact we had documentation, despite the fact we had letters, despite the fact we had a Constitution and a Declaration written during that time. I suppose it was also fake news that the Civil War that we had from 1860 through 1864 was also considered fake news. Or the civil rights marches that we had in the mid-20th century were fake news. How about the women's rights for voting, for being citizens? I guess that's also fake news too. I guess history is considered fake news to those who wear the red cap that says, "Make America Great Again." No, I look at it and I'm thinking, red coat. I'm seeing not the influence of British. I'm looking at the mindset of Russian red. How to screw around with America, you change the dynamics of how we look at our history around. Everything we've done is fake news, but everything told to us by a government party is gospel. So now we're going to be considering the person who sits in the current office, waiting for the countdown, being Nervous Nelly. He's waiting for the followers. He doesn't have power unless he has followers. Well, he's got his brainwashed hippie group. Pretty shortly, I'm not going to have the locks. I wouldn't be considered hippie after that. But I am considered a rebel. I would be considered Johnny Reb. I would be considered as someone who's fighting for the country's right to survive, fighting for the Constitution. Because at this point, we've already engaged in a civil war that we didn't even recognize. We have it in our homes, we have it in our lives, we have it everywhere right now. We have it online constantly. We have protests in the street where armed militias who fall upon the Second Amendment as the only gospel thing that they remember of the Constitution. None of the due processes that we have. And sure as hell not the First Amendment, but just the right to carry a gun. The right to intimidate people. They're fighting for the country. Of which version of the country are they fighting for? Because if they understand how the country works, if they understand how the government works, if they understand how the system works, are they fighting for the system or are they fighting for their own selves? We can have differences of opinions, different viewpoints in how we look at things. But the one thing you cannot take away is a person being born of what they are, or naturalized because they believed in an idea of a country where pluralism is what made our country workable. I didn't say great, I said workable. It depends on the individuals whether or not if we're going to make this country quote unquote great or not. And what is considered great? Are we going to be the dominant species on this planet? Are we going to be the dominant country at this point everywhere? Are we going to be the Roman Empire? Or are we going to be totally isolated from everybody else? Keep calling ourselves great? Keep kicking everybody else out until maybe there's only an elite few and everybody else is kicked out wondering why. Backstabbed. Backstabbed and betrayed. I'm seeing it. There's ignorance. There's arrogance. There's indifference. There's closed-mindedness. There are no good people on both sides. We are all polarized to the extreme at this point. And we're viewing each other as the enemy. As the enemy. In one morning, we would look at ourselves as countrymen and as family. And then the next morning, we have listened to a dictator. Someone who conned his way into the office, tore apart the Constitution, tore apart every principle that made our country of what we thought it was. And then the day after that, we're having a civil war over it because some of us had to follow a madman. Welcome to Nazi Germany. Welcome to fascism Italy. Welcome to Imperial Japan. Yes, say hello to the Axis powers. We have the dictates of the few telling people how they should operate. Or worse than that. Welcome to the Communist Party. They claimed, these lovely people who wear the red caps to say, Make America Great, or MAGA, that liberals are socialists, and that they're making us into communist China or Russia. In order to have that going on, there would have been a total desecration of the Constitution and its rights, and everything that we held so dear, that we fought so dear, that American citizens had bled and died for. And they have no clue, and they don't care, because they follow a madman. Come November, it is our choice, it is our sacred duty as sworn citizens to the Constitution of the United States to defend and protect our Constitution by performing our duties of voting. And if the majority rules at this point, if the majority has spoken where we have a candidate, we have to respect the process, because that is what makes us Americans. We have a process. This is part of our country, our operating system. We have to respect what has been, what made our country the way it is and workable. I never said great. People have a pride and ego situation about our country of saying it should be great. No, it is great. It is great. We need to have more greater than that. No, because we just thought, we're thinking along the lines of the Roman Empire at this point. How decadent they were until they fell. It took them centuries, but they fell. It may take us less time than that to fall, because we're tearing each other apart. We no longer hold values true to what our progenitors, what our ancestors had sworn against. They've sworn against enemies, foreign and domestic, going against the Constitution of the United States as they constantly attack our country from within and outside. And it upsets me a great deal. A day of Sunday, the political unrest day, how you call it, because all we hear is politics being played out, people arguing left and right, protesters in the streets trying to find quote-unquote justice for the fallen. Doesn't matter which color, doesn't matter which race or nationality, doesn't matter how they fell. What matters is which particular group you call a terrorist and what you don't. Black Lives Matters, Antifa, Proud Boys, Trumpsters. We are polarized. We cannot see past our nose. We cannot see the situation in front of us, except we see the anger, the frustration, the disharmony, the discordance. It's easy enough to throw in words from the English language if one knows how to use it well. It's another thing to demonstrate what it means to be and what it doesn't. I'm not going to say it's just a thought. I'm not going to say it's just an opinion. I'm saying what's happening right now as it is. I'm putting it out there. Come November, we have to respect the process of the Constitution of the United States, because this is what every citizen had sworn. And if you can't do that, then maybe you are no longer considered an American, but a puppet of someone else's regime. And maybe you are just a maggot who wears a red cap. Wears a red cap that reminds me of Mother Russia, comrade. До свидания.